I'm Leon Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday Tone Tip. On today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the DS-1 Distortion in the drive block. This is, of course, a model of the iconic little orange boss pedal, the DS-1, a very straightforward distortion pedal with 3 knobs, and they are modeled here as distortion, tone, and level over here. I want to show you how some of my favorite players would use this. I remember getting a DS-1 back in the day because I read that Joe Satriani and Steve Vai used it in their rigs. I also learnt that Gary Moore had one in his rig. A load of other players. Kurt Cobain was also associated with the DS-1 for distortion tones as well. So we're going to use those players as a reference point for using this in here. I'm going to start out with a bit of a Gary Moore inspired setup here. I'm using the Brit 2203 high, and there is a video getting around on the internet from back in the day with Gary demonstrating some Boss pedals, and he's playing through some 100-watt Marshalls in it. So I've just set this up for a rock crunch, and then what I'm going to do is kick in the DS-1. You'll notice that the distortion is at a minimum, the level is at a maximum, and the tone at the moment is at noon. So we're just going to be using this as a boost into the front of a crunchy amp. This is my personal favorite way to use the real DS-1 and the model on here. So we're just using it to hit the front of the amp harder to get more amp distortion. Sounds like this. Not only are we getting more gain on there, it's fattening up the overall tone. We had quite a bright rock crunch to start with. We've got more gain out of there, but it's kind of thicker and creamier, which if you play around with the tone control, you can get more or less of that effect if you like. You could even add a little bit of distortion on there just for some light extra clipping there. Next up, we'll take a look at using the DS-1 for a liquid lead sound. And to set up, I'm going to be using the Legend 102. This is a model of the Steve Vai Carvin Legacy amp. And I've already set this up for quite a lot of gain and sustain. This amp has a real smooth signature tone, so don't be afraid to crank up the treble and the presence on there. What we're going to do is kick in the DS-1, where the tone control is down quite low on here. I've got the distortion up, and again, the level at 10. So similar to the boost idea, we're just going to lean more into that smooth texture by keeping the tone low, and we are adding more distortion on there. So we'll hear it without it and then with it, and I'm going for a lead sound on here. I do have a nice stereo delay and reverb. With that setting, it's almost doing the same thing you would get out of a fuzz into a dirty amp, where it's just making everything creamier and fatter, and it's giving you that sustain and kind of beefing up those overtones on there. So this makes it really easy to get that singing lead tone at any volume that you like on there. I don't love these settings for rhythm guitar playing, but for pure lead playing, again, into an already singing amp, this works really, really well. We could try something that's maybe a little more, say, Joe Satriani than Steve Vai over here, and we'll start out with this JS410 lead orange model over here. What I'm going to do here is crank the distortion and the tone up above noon. I'm going to back the level off on there. I want this to give me a really mid-forward, almost kind of cocked wah lead tone on there. So we'll hear the starting point, and then I will bring that in. Examples we've been using so far, essentially we've been using the DS-1 model as a boost or an enhancer. If we had a singing lead tone, we got an even more singing lead tone. If we had a rock crunch, we fattened it up and boosted it. In this example though, I'm going to start off with a very early 90s grunge inspired rig with a clean amp. I've gone for the USA Mark IV Rhythm 1, going for that, Nirvana studio preamp clean tone. And we're just going to pummel it with the distortion and level on the DS-1 at 10 on there. You can adjust the tone to taste on here. I find keeping it below noon gives you that big, thick, almost fuzz sound out of it. If you wanted something really aggressive, that kind of swarm of bees tone, crank the tone up as well. But we get this thing. Absolutely filthy. Double track that in a mix with some loud bass and drums, and that is glorious. There's also a DS-1 Distortion mod model in here. The Real Boss pedal was a very popular platform for modifications, and we've got that baked in here. I kind of prefer this into the clean amp for this big, almost fuzz tone style thing. So let's have a listen again to the standard DS-1, and then we'll hear the mod for that kind of thing. Tools available to us in a Fractal, it can be easy to overlook the most simple real-world solutions, and I think this DS-1 and the DS-1 Distortion mod model in here work great when you just want that extra little bit of something on your guitar tone, or if you do want that big, thick, 90s grunge tone into a clean amp. I'd love to hear how you're using this or what other drive block models you're using as your main source of distortion in your rig. If you've got any other questions, drop me a question in the comment section below. Otherwise, I will see you all on next week's Tuesday Tone Tip. Take it easy.